Uhuru Comrades, welcome to day 3 of what has been a powerful 2020 Imperialism convention. If anybody out there not familiar with the term Uhuru, it means freedom in Swahili. And you're going to hear that with a whole lot today because we understand that freedom has to be on the front of our minds 24/7. So I'll be your host today, Dexter M. Wingo, and we have a jam-packed program for you today. We're going to be talking about building NPDM internationally. We're going to be talking about our economic development institutions. And it's election day. It's election day. You know, it's funny. It's election season in the bourgeois electoral arena, and it's also election season in the revolution. And today's going to be a really important day because this is when NPDM's leadership is really held accountable to the people, to the membership. And the people will be able to decide through a democratic process. We're not talking about like Democratic Party, Republican Party. We're talking about an actual genuine democratic process. They'll be able to decide who their leadership is. So we definitely don't want to miss out on that. But before we get started, I do want to salute Chairman Amalia Shatella, a leader and founder of the Uhuru movement, just for creating the NPDM and seeing the significance of NPDM. You know, this was during, shortly after a period where so many of our leaders were killed or locked down in prison, and the people have been basically, the masses have been basically scared out of participating in the revolution. And NPDM was created for the purpose of bringing us back into this process, reintroducing the masses back into political life. So I really want to appreciate and salute Chairman for that. Also want to salute Deputy Chair, Onajinea Shatella. She's the visionary behind the Black Power Blueprint, and is really just leading the charge for creating our own independent African economy. So I want to salute both of them. And before we get into the program today, there are a few announcements and housekeeping rules we do have to go over. So we're going to go over that real quick. Right. So during the events, as well as during the Q&A portions, panelists should use the chat box to communicate with other panelists to avoid interrupting another presenter. To our attendees, you are encouraged to use the Q&A box and the raise hand feature. You will not be able to unmute yourself. So to make sure you are acknowledged during the program, you will need to communicate through those means. We are live streaming on the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement's Facebook page and the Burning Spear TV YouTube page. And at any time, you can promote and invite others to tune in via those platforms. Now, as far as our announcements, it's not too late to bid, y'all. As y'all know, we've had this auction going on since Friday. There are a lot of cool stuff, collectibles, jewelry, all this kind of stuff that we auctioned off. Definitely take a look at that. We're going to be announcing our winners at the end of today. We also want to call on you to join and support the Louisiana United International Working Group regarding the prisons and prisoners being made today. Every Sunday, tune into Omali Taught Me, which is Chairman Amalia Shatella's Sunday study at 8 a.m. Eastern on Facebook and the Burning Spear YouTube channel. Every other Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, tune in to the NPDM Facebook page for the Burning Spear Study Group. We're calling on you also to join us at the ASI conference in Europe on September 19th and September 20th, where the African People's Socialist Party will convene a 2-day conference in September to build the African Socialist International as a worldwide party that's going to provide leadership and liberation for all African people the world over. We're also calling you to tune in. We got a lot of events going on. Tune in. Tune into our September 20th webinar, Black Power Solutions to Defunding the Police, hosted by the Northern Region of the African People's Socialist Party, with a keynote presentation by Diab of the Black Community Control of the Police Working Group. We're also calling you to register for the Black is Back Coalition's Black People's March on the White House on November 7th and November 8th. Lastly, register for Uhuru Foods and Pies Fall Campaign from October to December. Go to uhurupies.org for more information. From here, I want to hand it over to the International President of NPDM in my direct leadership, President Columbi Internet. Uhuru.
Uhuru Comrades! These last 2 days have been amazing. This have been the African working class organizing for power, the African working class saying that we have an agenda, we have a theory, and we're ready to go out in the world and recruit and bring the masses into political life. So this has been by far amazing. I mean, just on yesterday, we had Chairman Amala Yeshatella that deepened our understanding of exactly why PDUM is so critical to be the mass international organization of the world. We've seen the African People's Socialist Party lay out, this whole strategy for the region strategy, and how PDUM, is going to adopt that strategy. Like, this has been an amazing convention. So we say to all those sellouts out there, we coming for you. We found our voice. We have our vehicle, and it's the International People Democratic Uhuru Movement under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, the Vanguard Party. So we say, bullet, bullet.
Sell out, sell out.
Sell out, sell out.
Bullet, bullet.
No surrender.
No compromise.
No surrender.
No compromise.
We would never surrender, and we would never compromise. We want everything. We want all of our land back, and we say hands off African people. Uhuru!
Uhuru!
One Africa!
One nation!
One nation!
One Africa!
One nation!
One Africa!
One Africa!
One nation!
Israel too!
Africa!
Africa!
Uhuru.
Uhuru!
Uhuru. I wish I had that same audience in that room. It's not the same in this room by itself. Uhuru, president. Moving this program along, we got to start off with some culture. We got to start off with some music. So from here, I'm going to give it to the Ngoma drummers out of St. Louis. Uhuru.
Hey!
All right, all right. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's culture right there. What, that doesn't fire you up? Shoot, I always wanted to one of these days. But moving on to this next panel here. We have Mwambi Tangu. Mwambi Tangu. He is the membership coordinator and outreach coordinator for Impedum, and he'll be leading a panel right now on building Impedum internationally. So Impedum was formed in 1991 as a national People's Democratic Uhuru movement. And with the establishment of branches in Africa and United Kingdom in the early 2000s, NPDUM became the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement. So regarding Mwambi, for the past better part of the 16 years of his life, Mwambi has been an organizer in San Diego. And as I mentioned before, currently functions as the membership coordinator and outreach coordinator on the International Executive Committee of Impedum. So, Uhuru Mwambi.
Uhuru. Uhuru. As Dexter said, I want to thank you, Dexter, for being an amazing host today. As Dexter said, my name is Mwambi Tangu. I'm the current international membership and outreach coordinator for Impedum. And today, we have a powerful panel that will provide insight and a scope into the international reach of the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement. Today, we are joined by the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party and founder of the Uhuru movement, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. We are joined by Secretary General of the African Socialist International, Loezi Kinshasa. And we are joined by the regional chair of the African Socialist International, Tafari Mugeri. Before we get into the panel, I wanted to salute our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Since the 60s, Chairman has forged the African Revolution into public eye. In 2020, people all over the world are coming into revolutionary life, and it is because of the theory of African internationalism and the steadfast work of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I'd also like to salute Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela. As Dexter said, just the mastermind behind Black Star Enterprise and just really the mastery of bringing economic and political work together. As we continue, the International Office of Membership and Recruitment for Impedum has been tasked to win the African working class to a position of independence. Through the use of the branch building manual, the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement has been entrusted by the party with the task of being the mass front of the African Revolution. Impedum is shifting from a campaign-based organization to the power base of the African Revolution. We are following the mandates of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the founder of Impedum, to transform from a defensive stance into an offensive position based on the participation of thousands of members around the world. After we build branches, the branches will open up an office in their area where they can organize, sell Uzi, do political education, and just be away from colonialism for a moment, to build the African political and economic independence, to gain Uhuru territories, to gain freedom territories, right where you are as African people, so we can claim freedom and claim freedom through our local branches of Impedum. The first panelist that I wanted to bring forward is the founder of Impedum, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And what I wanted to ask Chairman Omali is if you could give us understanding of the origins of Impedum and some of the history of from it was People's Democratic Uhuru Movement up till now where it's the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. Uhuru, Chairman Omali.
Uhuru, Comrade. Thank you so much, Comrade Mwambi, for the introduction. And I want to express my appreciation to the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, this extraordinary executive committee that you have, and to President Kalambai Andanet for the leadership that she has provided for this organization for the time of her presidency. And by virtue of leadership of NPDUM, the leadership she has provided for African masters throughout the world. I want to say that it's really important for everybody to understand that the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement is an organization of the African People's Socialist Party. That's been said. It's been said more than once during this process, but it's extremely important. It's extremely important for us to acknowledge this, because a lot of times Africans join organizations or work with organizations that characterize themselves as mass organizations, but they are led by organizations, parties, and things like that that are invisible, and people don't know the existence of these other organizations that provide the leadership. And I think that people need to know where the leadership of our movement is coming from. And so it is the African People's Socialist Party. We say this proudly. We don't hide our existence. And the fact is, we have a responsibility to provide leadership for masses of African people. You mentioned that the NPDUM was at one time the People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. And I want to say that NPDUM, as a creature of the African People's Socialist Party, was something that we brought into existence in the process of trying to solve the problems of the revolution. It's not just something that was created to be able to say that there's another organization here, or the party has this organization. We're trying to solve the problems of the revolution. And fundamental problems of the revolution from the beginning is that it was militarily crushed, defeated. And in the wake of the military defeat, and when I say that, I want to be clear, because some people have problems recognizing and accepting that, because it somehow undermines the romantic notion of just an ongoing process, and that we never can be defeated, and we can be defeated. And that's why tactics and strategies and having revolutionary science is so important, because if you don't recognize the defeat of the revolutionary movement, then you can't tell when it's been hijacked, when the struggle of the people has been hijacked by counter-revolutionaries or non-revolutionaries. All they have to do is call themselves something. And for example, you've seen, as I have, the pictures or posters that show perhaps something like Garvey, and show Malcolm, and then show Obama as though they were expressions of the same process. They're not. The fact is that there would be no Obama except for the defeat of our revolution. And Obama is not a part of the revolutionary trajectory of our people. He is an expression of this defeat, of this loss. So the party had to try and solve this problem. King killed, Malcolm killed, scores, well, at least more than 30 members of the Black Panther Party assassinated, co-founder of the African People's Socialist Party assassinated, Lumumba killed, Nkrumah overthrown and then killed later on, Che Guevara killed. All of this was happening in a very intense process where masses of people had been brought into political life. And of course, what we understand about revolution is that it is the highest expression you can find of the masses of people being involved, brought into political life. And that's where we had massive participation of people, Africans and other peoples all around in the revolutionary process. And then in political life, these are people who before were seen as doormats and tools and things like that to carry out the agenda of rulers and oppressors and upper class forces. But now the masses were in motion and taking power and making revolutionary struggle around the world. This was an exciting moment in history. It was the moment that the Chinese referred to as when revolution was the main trend in the entire world. And that's what we were looking at. And then we saw the assassinations, the brutal murders and things like that. And so the African People's Socialist Party, which itself came from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee as a really fundamental component of our development, which was really a kind of a bridge between the civil rights movement or the fight for democracy within the system to the struggle for Black power and revolution. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, we are children of that process. We are children, if you will, of the struggle for Black power and JOMO, which was the junta militant organizations founded that I played a leading role in creating, was one of the 3 organizations that would come together and become the African People's Socialist Party in May of 1972. But we still got a revolutionary movement. We still got a revolution that's been crushed, defeated. And the problem that we have to solve is bringing people back into political life, bringing the masses of people into political life. And we initiated various kinds of processes and campaigns. In the early 1970s, we were involved in late 60s and early 70s with the founding of the party. We were involved in the struggle to free Desi Woods. We built an entire international movement calling for the freedom of Desi Woods. And through that process in 1977, we had the first mobilization that actually brought together for the first time since the crushing of our movement, a national mobilization that was being led by the anti-colonial or the pro-independence sector of the movement of the revolution, which was a critical component. And the party spent much of our time trying to really promote the leadership of the whole pro-independence, anti-colonial movement over the struggle of Black people. That is the primary contest that we were in terms of inside the African community was the contest of, opposed to reformism, opposed to opportunism, opposed to this whole assumption that somehow African people, the assimilationists, that the solution for us is not our own power, our own freedom, our own dignity, but to latch on to a relationship and cling to it of trying to unite with and become one with the oppressor nation, the colonial powers. And so that was the contest that we were engaged in. We said, you know, the contest is we have to elevate the anti-colonial struggle. The masses of our people have to be won to recognition of the anti-colonial struggle as the leadership of the whole movement. And this is part of what we were involved in. So we created in 1977, we had this incredible mobilization, Free Desi Woods in Atlanta, Georgia. And many forces who were part of that anti-colonial pro-independence movement came together in an actual action, as opposed to in these candlelit rooms where we were going through ceremonies and doing handshakes and praying with our own version of, creating our own version of Black Christmas or something to that effect. We were talking about how to make this thing happen, how to bring forces into political life. So we created this mobilization that brought forces together. It's an incredible mobilization in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was on 1977, it would have been around what they characterize as Labor Day. And from that, we had a meeting. I met with Comrade Max Stanford, who called Muhammad Ahmed, who was a really important force in the 60s movement. He was somebody who had worked with Malcolm X. He was somebody who was a leader of the organization that was called the Revolutionary Action Movement, and had lived underground and sometimes not underground, had been framed up, chased around the country for long periods of time. And we met. And we talked about what we can do to advance this unity and raise this unity to a higher level. And it's from this discussion that we decided that we would build the African National Prison Organization. We didn't call it that. We just said we would make a movement to build a unify African people in the movement around the question of freeing political prisoners and freeing African people who were in prison in general. And that was something that we took on. It was supposed to have been a movement-wide process, but we could not get more than lip service from other sectors of the movement. But we built that. We built the African National Reparations, African National Prison Organization. We had this incredible conference in Louisville, Kentucky in 1979 to consolidate that. And but you know, there were disruptors, splitters, and forces like that who came into it, and some of them were with the parts of other organizations who couldn't stand to see the advancement of the African working class involved in this revolutionary process. And they did everything they could to sabotage it, but we did it. We built it. We built in 1982, we had made a determination we were going to take on the reparations question to make it a household word. We said, we united that it could be a unifying thing for the whole African nation, for African people to fight for around the question of reparations. It said that reparations offers the best explanation that African people could be given in terms of our conditions of existence in this country and in the world, in fact. And so we agreed again that we were going to be, as a part of the joint process, a joint movement by the so-called pro-independence, anti-colonial struggle that would have included a number of forces. We were going to do this. And of course, as it ended up, the party happened to do it ourselves after a serious struggle with some of the forces who were supposed to be a part of this. And so that didn't work. And so we were doing all kinds of political work as the African People's Socialist Party. And it was very difficult. Though in many ways we were alone doing this work, but what was difficult is the masses of people, it was hard to bring people directly into revolutionary struggle. And so we said, what we have to do is have an organization, a movement, a process that could bring people into political life that did not require them to recognize revolution as the outcome of what it was we were doing. We didn't retreat as the party from revolution. We said the party has to create mass organization that would open the door for people who otherwise wouldn't be involved in the struggle. And this has to be, and so in Oakland, California, we built first, and this was, by the way, in 1984-85, People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, PDUM. And with PDUM, we got involved in a lot of struggles. We were able to bring all kinds of people. We took struggles against slum laws. We took on struggles against police violence. We took on struggles against the problems in education. We took on all kinds of issues, and we went right where the people were struggling and brought them into political life with the objective of helping the people to understand that the particular struggles that they were involved in were part of a universal contradiction that Africans were confronted with, and that we have the struggle of trying to bring them into a greater life that could raise them to revolutionary consciousness. And from this struggle, it was clear that what was happening in Oakland was happening throughout the country and throughout the world. So we brought this struggle to Chicago in 1991. In 1991, we came together with something like 24 different cities and states came together, and people, I really want to call on everybody here to look at the political report to that founding convention of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement to get a sense of the history and the significance of that. And that happened in 1991. And the objective was to defeat the counterinsurgency, this war that had begun with the process of crushing our movement, et cetera, and when to defeat the counterinsurgency and bring African people back into political life in the struggle against colonialism. And so we succeeded in pulling that organization together, and we've done incredible work since that time. And NPDUM has changed in some ways, but the thing is that over a period of time, we've really consolidated incredible leading forces who were part of a process of taking anti-colonial democratic struggle to African people throughout the United States and ultimately throughout the world. So that's something about how this process began and what brought NPDUM into existence and what has characterized its development to some extent up to now. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you so much for that, Chairman. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just really appreciate getting that scope of how this began, really coming out of the revolution of the 60s and all the work that was going on with the party through the 70s. I wanted to go ahead and transition to Secretary General Loezi Kinshasa. And really appreciate you for being here, Secretary General. I know you're out there in London doing amazing work. And I wanted to ask you a few questions. I actually had 3 questions that I wanted to ask you. So the first question that I wanted to ask you, Secretary General, is can you tell us about NPDUM becoming an international organization? Uhuru.
Yes, Uhuru, Comrade Mwambi. Just want first of all just to salute and recognize leadership. My leadership, Chairman Omar is the founder of the INPIDAM. This critical organization created to bring back masses of African people to political life, to revolutionary political life. I want to salute you, President Kalambai Adanet, the president for INPIDAM, and the IEC of INPIDAM for extending the invitation to me. And also, I want to salute all the comrades for INPIDAM who worked tirelessly to make this convention happen. And of course, I want to salute the host, Comrade Dexter, and all the comrades who are watching this historical convention. Why INPIDAM why it's critical, basically, to have INPIDAM as international mass organization of the African People's Socialist Party. I'll take just a few examples people may be familiar with. We have seen like the struggle in Burkina Faso, which is in West Africa. There was a movement known as Ballet Citoyen, basically it's the broom. So sweep, what they identified as the corrupted politicians, and that was maybe 4 years ago, and the president is gone. The Neocolonial president, Compaore, is gone. Now they have a new government, but people can celebrate, for their victory against Compaore, the man who killed with the French, who killed Thomas Sankara, but nothing has changed. You can go in Senegal, just similar time they created a movement, Yanamar, so which means we had enough. Against the Neocolonial president there. His name is Abdul Wade. And, it was forced out of, or it was defeated, I think, in the election. They prevented him from running for a third mandate, from changing the constitution. That's what most of the African presidents in Africa do. When the 2 mandates expire and they change the constitution so they can stay for a third or fourth mandate. But nothing has changed really in Senegal. African masses, African workers, African peasants are still catching hell. Senegal, just like Burkina Faso, is still a colonized country today. You go to North Africa, we saw the so-called Arab Spring, and people were excited. But when you look at it, the president of Tunisia at the time, Ben Ali, was forced to flee. Now you have a different neocolonial governments when they have elections on a regular basis, which satisfies the needs of the petty bourgeoisie in that country. But Tunisia is still a colonized country in Africa. And you go to Egypt, there was what's his name? Mubarak. He was known as a violent, so president, a dictator, as the bourgeoisie would refer to him. And mobilization that took place there took him by, took not just him, but took the imperialist system also by surprise. But Mubarak is gone, and the petty bourgeoisie there, the military, are still in control, and even it seems that the control has been reinforced. But we saw the mass movement there, mass uprising. We saw this from Tunisia to North Africa, but the African workers have not gone to power anywhere in Senegal or Burkina Faso or Egypt or in Tunisia. You can go to places like Haiti, in difficult conditions of Haiti. We saw the emergence of powerful movement, the Lavalas, under the leadership of Jean-Bertrand Aristide. And of course, the United States and the French did everything to prevent him from, being really the president, according to the power given to him by the Constitution of Haiti. But you can still see that the coming of Aristide to power did not mean the African working class seized power or took control of the state power. So you can see that. So generally speaking, you can even see the recent coup in Mali, where the army officers seized power and the people on the street dancing and all that. But it does not mean the workers are going to power. No, it just means a fraction of African bourgeoisie gone to power. You look at the ANC in South Africa, they had a huge, I don't remember any mass mobilization that could be bigger than what we used to see in South Africa. They created organizations like UDF and other organizations controlled by the ANC. But the African bourgeoisie has gone to power in South Africa, but mass African workers haven't gone to power at all. So what is quite clear, the African bourgeoisie does not anymore address the struggle to end universal colonial domination of African people. As far as the African bourgeoisie is concerned, now everyone is independent. So only struggle that is allowed now is a struggle to reform neocolonialism. You know, no corruption, respect the constitutions, you know, stuff like that. And which means that as long as the African working class is submissive, is dominated by the African bourgeoisie, we will continue to be colonized forever. So it becomes really necessary for the African working class to achieve independence from the African bourgeoisie, organizationally, ideologically, economically too, I would say. So we can build a new movement. We can provide a real anti-colonial leadership led by the African working class itself. I have prepared some slides. If it's possible, we can just go very rapidly. I mean, when I say rapidly, I mean rapidly. So these just what they call the state castle in Ghana, but in reality is the prison. The first probably prison built by the oppressor, by the invaders of Africa. So if we can move quickly, some slogans are in Ghana. So I've been just working to get the slogans to be, in a bilingual, whenever it's possible. Here, basically, people have to be just aware of the companies that control the modern world today. You know, the Apple, the Google, the Sony, the Facebook, Microsoft. And in reinforced blue, you see the minerals they are after. Without those minerals, forget about Sony, Apple, Google, they will not exist. And Africa has most of these of resources in abundance. So it's a critical part of the struggle of the African working class to know what they're fighting for. Concretely, we're fighting to take control for resources. Which resources so we know? So we can even chase who has invested what in the stock, things like that when you begin to go in detail. So the struggle for control resources, our own resources. Now, next one, please. This is the mapping of natural resources. It's really incomplete. And this mapping, that's where you will see Africa. Africa, just, rationale is to control African resources. So you will see, if you see Africa, where there is uranium, somewhere in West Africa, there, Africom is there for uranium. And if we see diamond and cobalt in the Congo, you hear Africom is there. Africom is the United States government's military African plan to basically control African resources and to determine which imperialists will have access to African resources. Basically, it's a strike against China too. Next one, please. And this is just an example used for cobalt. What is it used for? There are hundreds of use for cobalt, but just for the African working class to begin to know cobalt, what is it used for? There are many examples, so we can't give all the examples. It's just a catalyst used to control the fume coming from your car. So yeah, and Africa has most of it. It's not going to be. And this also cobalt use an integrated circuit. Can you imagine any electronic device with an integrated circuit? So Africa is never far. It's just where you are. The resources, every device you're using. So, and the cobalt come in the Congo is about 66% of the world production of it. So, just the working class to know that. It's next one, please. This also rechargeable batteries. Green energy. It's just BS. Because there is no such thing as a clean energy, green economy doesn't exist. That's the foundation of it. You can't have a green economy without cobalt. It's just not possible. Just next one, please. And you can see the African workers here preparing to sell cobalt. You can see how poor they are. You know, they're unorganized, so the price is being imposed on them. So, yes, next one, please. And the U.S. wars in Africa before and after Africa. You know, you can see the U.S. soldier being dragged on the street of Mogadishu, 1991. And most of these weapons were transferred to Uganda, where the U.S. used them to launch the war in Rwanda that, you know, dislodged the power that was in place and finally ended up in the Congo. So people can see the connection there. Yes, next one, please. Of course, this is the pro-French president of Rwanda before he was overturned by the U.S. War using Kagame and others. Yes, next one, please. So this is the pro-U.S. president, Kagame, you can see on the left, and it's Bill Clinton, of the president for Israel of that time. So the proxy of the U.S., one of the big proxies of the U.S. In Africa is Paul Kagame, the Neocolonial puppet there. Yeah, next one, please. And of course, Mobutu used to be the favorite of white power in Africa, but now it's Museveni and Kagame, I might say. So 1 million people killed in Rwanda, over 10 million people killed in the Congo. All these are parts of the, not just consciousness, but a history of the ongoing struggle in that part of Africa that African working class has to be aware of, because it will inform basically how the struggle looks like. Yes, next one, please. And yeah, these are the 3 worst, I would say, African neocolonial puppets today in the region. You know, they make Mobutu looks good. People now regret, you know, there is a nostalgia of Mobutu in the Congo, for example, which is incredible because of what these 3 are doing in assaulting the African working class and facing there. So you go Kagame, Museveni, and Kabila. So next one, please. And you see, these are the consequences, ongoing consequences of the war in Africa, Africom war in Africa, the French war in Africa. You can see all these 60 million people displaced around the world, that 18 million of those ones are in Africa. And you see 12.5 people are displaced in their own country. It's just incredible. You know, humans can't live in conditions like that, you know, and it's just unbelievable, but that's how much a great number of our people live today. Concentration camps. Next one, please. U.S. shadow wars in Africa. I already mentioned Africa before, because there is no, you know, you don't hear anything like anti-war movement from you know, white people who hate wars. But war in Africa is a, you know, it's a fact of life. It's a permanent aspect of, you know, many people in Africa today. And these are U.S. wars in Africa, French wars in Africa too, and Germans, and so on. Next one, please. And you can see the Africom. That's the U.S. military training of, you know, of the African soldiers there in Sahel, basically a stretch of land that straight from West Africa to East Africa. So, and the key countries involved in that war: Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, and Chad. That's where the coup took place in Mali 3 or a month ago. Next one, please. And you can see in this map, here you're looking at Niger, uranium is there, gas is there. If you move to the right, Mali, a little gold is there. So many resources, you know, this land you see over Sahel, it looks like a desert. No, it's one of the wealthiest part of Africa. So you can see the French troops are there, the German troops are there, the US troops are there, the EU troops are there from different countries in Europe. It's unbelievable what's going on in Africa right now. So African working class needs to be aware that when we say internationalize, implement, that's what we're talking about, being aware of the contradiction that will be basically, will determine basically aspect of the struggle we need to develop. Also, you have different bases, media bases in Africa. You have the UN troops in Africa, MONUSCO, MINUSA, AMISON, MONUSCO. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You know, it's more honest to say Africa is under military occupation. You know, that's where it is. Yeah. Next one, please. And this is just the coup, you know, guys. We just made a coup in Mali. It's just the chaos, and people are celebrating because these guys are in power. I mean, just the picture alone tells you they are not in power to solve the problems of the African working class. You know, and the amount of coups is independence in Africa. 260 coups in Africa. 105 succeeded. You know, and that's the African petty bourgeoisie. Every time you hear coup in Africa, that's the African petty bourgeoisie moving for itself or moving for whoever is funding them. You know. Yes, next one, please. Yeah, this is the cost of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I just want to share those figures so you can see the amount of money spent to make war in Iraq and Afghanistan. It comes to $159 billion. And it's just such, and this, the amount of money Chavez spent to provide social programs in 10 years in Venezuela is less than that. It was like about 120 billion dollars over 10 years. That's what Chavez, Hugo Chavez, you know, provide to the people. And the United States, you know, I'm not sure how many years, I can't really remember how many years they spend this amount of money. It just tells you our parasitic system is basically, and these, anyway, this just an example, the cost of war, one aspect of the cost of war. Yes, next one, please. It also mean the US is not our friend, of course. So that's to make it the case obvious. There is something from the Black Panther Party, you know, put that, you know, imperialism, you know, out of Africa, so out of Asia and so on. So I think, yeah. Next one, please. And yeah, these are the dates, warfare in Africa, and under any circumstances, we have to juggle with at least, you know, for an amount of 360 billion debts to pay at any year. And a third is owed to China. You have African petty bourgeoisie who holds a minimum of $500 billion in offshore accounts. You have in terms of tax evasion in Africa, just a minimum of $100 billion. So compared to the amount of foreign aid they give Africa with 43, which is much less, you know. Yes, next one, please. And the estimated amount of money France takes from us, from 14 countries in Africa, $5 billion each year, is just incredible. And the Africans go to jail in France, and you know, for not having the papers in order. When France takes $500 billion from us every year. Next one, please. Yeah, this is a typical railroad. You know, we're talking about transportation system in Africa. When you see a train in Africa, usually just for taking our resources out of Africa. And this is just one way instead of a double or three tracks or 4 tracks, just one single track. Ridiculous, but it's for resources to leave Africa. Nothing you do to move Africans, you know, around Africa, you know, for our own benefits. Next one, please. Yeah, so you can see these are the workers in the Congo, basically. You know, these are youngsters, you know, you can see probably not even 18 carrying that load of coltan. And the coltan ends up in mobile phones, you know, being used around the world and filling the pockets for Apple, Microsoft, and Samsung, and Sony, you know, yeah. Next one, please. So that's what I'm saying, the really cost of iPhone genocide in the Congo. So these are the same workers in Kivu province, coltan. It's next one, please. Yeah, these really, when we say this is single issue campaign, just the one Kabila to go, because they don't have access to RNDP, or Revolutionary National Democratic Program, that will tie them to revolution. So it's always used by African petty bourgeoisie, exhausting the resources of the masses on one issue. I mean, it just shows criminal acts, you know, from the African petty bourgeoisie. But that's an example that we have to overturn, you know, as in around the world. Next one, please. Yeah, you know, Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah. Next one, please. These are young people, man. Yeah, these are young people murdered by the U.S. proxy militias, in Eastern Congo, basically. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, the same that one. There are plenty of them. Next one, please. These just the African workers, with the courage, fighting the police, and this just to highlight that the struggle for democracy is really struggle for international black power, and this is one concept that needs to be generalized throughout the African nation. Yes, next one, please. Yeah, the same thing. Neocolonial troops, counterinsurgency force. Next one, please. Yeah, during future stolen by Telsa Glencoe, extracting these resources. And as you know, Telsa and Glencoe are one of the most wealthiest parasitic capitalists on the planet. Next one, please. Yeah, these just in Madagascar. It's called Mica. It's a kind of a mineral you didn't have to extract, but when you leave Madagascar, the price is inflated by, it's inflated 500 times when you leave Africa, when you leave Madagascar. It's just incredible. And these are the young workers, because they treat them, like workers by imperialists. So everybody has to be organized, Yes, next one, please. As you can see, most of those workers are really children, really a lot of them. And these, we can't even travel, these Africans dying every month to cross the sea. Every month, and it's not even an issue. It doesn't make the headline anymore, but that's if not every day, And since 2014, 19,000 Africans have drowned, in the Mediterranean Sea. Next one, please. Of course, these in the same Mediterranean Sea, the cruises are being advertised. So you can be on a cruise, and in the same sea, Africans are drowning, on a regular basis. Yes, next one, please. Yeah, I think we already saw this, and these the in the mines for the Microsoft and the rest of them. Next one, please. Yeah, these they walk distance, to get clean water. That's not acceptable, and that's everywhere in Africa. Clean water is such a big issue. It does not even figure in a discussion that takes place, mobilize the masses throughout Africa. They are mobilized around an individual, who will save us from, something like that. And they drink contaminated water everywhere. This water they're going to drink is 43 times the level of cobalt, 5 times the level of lead, 4 times the level of cadmium and uranium in the urine. I mean, it's just, yeah. Next one, please. Yeah, Bobby, this is the last slide. So that's why we say imperialism out of Africa, and we have to arm everybody. With African internationalism, we also have to harm all the workers and the women, physically. As you can see, the sister there is no playing. With African internationalism, with a good weapon in his hand, we're going on the rise. We're going to attack the African bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie itself. I think that's it basically in terms of. So this is the end of the slide. I just want to show this slide because NPDM will have to, to get involved in all these issues. You got single issues, people. So basically, we can use the RNDP to be consistent across the board, so the African working class can definitely know whose enemies are and how to fight them. And from the UN to the proxy wars, to the immigration, to reparation, to the genocide, all aspects of colonial life, NPDM can be able to bring the African working class. As you can see, some of them will be very young people, and so on. So, to your question, sorry my answer is long, but just to make the case, we need international organization that will unify the struggles for African people, will bring back the anti-colonial leadership, which can only be today the African working class, as the only legitimate leader of our African struggle, and will put the demand for Black power at central. You can't be a democratic movement if your movement aim is not to have an international, not a national, international Black state power, because we all know without international Black state power, we're going nowhere. And these are some of the aspects basically needs to happen so we can have a independent everywhere. Welcome.
Uhuru Secretary General. I really appreciate the way you really helped us understand what's happening in Africa and how the parasitic nature of this system, whether it's Europe, the US, Microsoft, Tesla, all these white power structures are literally sucking the life and the blood out of the continent, the resources. So I really, really appreciate that presentation and being able to say, that's why we need to build impedum everywhere, because, this attack, which most of us don't really get an understanding of, really is widespread and it's all over the continent, and Africans are suffering. So I really, really appreciate the brilliant presentation, the brilliant PowerPoint, which is a great transition to our chairman in South Africa, Chairman Tafari Mugeri. Chairman Tafari, I first really want to appreciate you, Chairman, tuning in from South Africa. We really appreciate you being here. And I really wanted to ask you just some questions about building impedum in Africa. I understand when you came into the work, there wasn't an impedum in Africa. And now in 2020, impedum has been able to spread like wildfire. So I wanted to ask you just a couple of questions. Just if you could tell us about establishing impedum in occupied Azania, and how did it grow throughout Africa? And just maybe give a little bit of details in regards to, what it was like building in the different provinces and the different areas in South Africa and, throughout the continent, and what the future looks like.
Uhuru Comrades, I really thank you for this panel. I really want to express appreciation for being able for this invitation, really, to be part of this panel amongst these great giants of the international African revolution. And so I salute Chairman Ali Shitela for successfully building the party and movement that we need in order to have a successful African revolution. And I'm just really taken by the presentation that SUDC has just made here, which exposes there's no excuse for saying we should fight for our freedom. There's no excuse, because it's clear that Africa is free. And this is why we need impedum here in Africa. And the perception to impedum has been standing based on the aims we've been able to access. Most people who are in Iran right now because they just don't know about it, and which means we have to go out there and do whatever that's necessary from the party movement to be everywhere for people to be able to access this movement wherever they are. So I just want to respond to your question. Before the question, I want to salute all of you, comrades of the IC of Impida, President Mbai, being able to pull together this amazing convention. I've been working since the 2 days, and it's been amazing. So I want to say, in terms of building Impida here, we were introduced to the movement some few years ago, from 2013. But we're trying to find a way around it, because we also got into some predictions ourselves. But just speak about myself coming into the party and into the movement. One thing that immediately warmed me was the seriousness, how where organization is put into organization in terms of in the movement. When we had meetings with the party, before we could join, everything that starts on time, there's minutes to be there, follow up, so forth. And something that I never really experienced trying to be part of all these organizations that are in Occupazania. And another thing was the fact that everything is in the like we believe it. Like, if socialists, we have, and that's what we mean.
Uhuru, comrade. Uhuru, comrade. I don't know if this is happening for everybody, but it's very difficult to understand, comrade president. And so I don't know if is that true for everybody else? It seems the signal seems to be weak, and I don't want to miss this. I think everybody should have the benefit of this presentation.
Yes, it's weaker for me too.
Yeah, so it's very difficult to understand what Comrade Tafari was saying. Is there anything on your side, Comrade Tafari? I mean, I know sometimes you've been able to move to a better place or something. I don't know if that's an issue with you or what.
It was fine, but I know right now that it's really like a thing.
Comrade Masamela is suggesting that you should turn off your video, but everybody's saying it's difficult. Comrade, is that what you're saying, Comrade Masamela, that he should turn off his video?
Yeah, I unite with that, because then it'll possibly clear up the audio.
Okay, he's done that. Let's see if it makes a difference, Comrade Tafari.
Or can I be heard now?
Yes, I think so.
All right. I really apologize that I should have been to a place where a signal. I just didn't the time. But to pick from where I left off, I was just really basically trying to the background of we came into the movement, and what led us to really being in PDAM, and we have actually done in that process. So I was talking about like there are all sorts of organizations here in Tanzania. Lots of organizations like in the elections, last national election, there were like 49 political parties that ran for the national office for government, and then something over 500 political parties, organizations that were running for local government and so forth. So there's lots of organizations, but then really stands out party is really living in what we said. When we say the African working class, what we mean, and that's what we want to organize. When we say revolution, really talking about revolution, which is overturning the entire social system and ensuring that African people are able to get their freedom. So since 2015, when SG Luezi visited us here with the comrade, we really got the necessary equipment for us to really build the party in fashion that says that we are putting ourselves to gain, because we be the movement for time, but then since 2005 we've been building like using the apparatus that been set up for us. So what we have done, we have built a number of branches here and with income, but then initially our approach to building these branches was in response to the difficulty we've been having to win people into the party, mainly because we were university at that time and we were trying to find students. A lot of students are there as RNDP bourgeois, but as soon as we moved in townships, like it was like obvious that we have to organize the African class, and that's where we've been. I just want to talk a little bit about like why it is necessary for us to build PDAM here, because in PDAM it's fight for the democratic right, the African working class, and an assumption here, especially here in Tanzania, that since 1994 democracy was achieved here in South Africa, and then just to expose the ruling party ANC. They've never fought for independence, for the independence of African masses. Like usually you talk about other countries in Africa, like maybe Ghana got its independence in 1957 and so forth. And but in terms of Africa, you not talk of independence, they talk democracy and so forth, because the ANC program was really to fight for to democratize South Africa, for the democratized to be extended to Black people, not to fight for independence from the settler colonizer. That's why even you listen to the speech by Nelson Mandela and the other ANC leaders, they talk about the franchise of one man, one vote and things like that. They never talk about the independent African people able to possess our land and so forth. Actually, I think it was in 1955 where they had a meeting in Cliptown. They drew this document known as the Film Charter, the South African Communist Party actually had a hand in drafting of that document, which, like, I mean, even they, we reject document, of course, but it suggests the land does not belong to African people who have dispossessed, but belongs to anyone who yeah, both colonizers and the colonized. But then even the document itself, they can apply it, right? Because it talks about like people getting access to housing, basic necessities and so forth. If you come to Tanzania right now, a lot of Africans are in shut towns. They are more, and there's a rate increase in the number of city town communities, houses built of corrugated iron and so on. And the African workings move into into those places to create their own inadequate shelters. The police come, and they are also private police, the red air, which are hired by people who own the land. They just call them, and they come and bomb the deltas and arrest the African class. So in the democratic rise that they fought for, that the ANC pretend to be fighting for, have not reached the African working class. That's why we need Idam here in Tanzania. So we had the bourgeois revolution in the 90s, and the African bourgeoisie have actually realized their historical mission, which is to usher in neocolonialism. So this is really the reality across Africa. It may be expressed in all sorts of ways, and sometimes there's a lot of information that get about the reality of the people here, because when we talk about South African times, there's this suggestion that the conditions must be better for Africa in South Africa compared to the rest of the continent, which is not true. Conditions may be better for the African petty bourgeoisie because they live in the same neighborhood as white people. They shares in companies that were previously monopolized by the white bourgeoisie. That's why even when they struggle, they talk about fighting against white monopoly capital, because they feel that white people have monopolized the whole control over the labor and value that is produced by the working class. So they want a share of that, so they act like white people in so to say, so the African class have not really been given the chance to fight for their own interests. So even if you vote, you still voting for the interests of the African bourgeoisie. So INPDAM must be there to raise demands. We've been in these shanty towns, the ones that have been recently established, like now, and also we organizing in the townships. So I was just really reporting on what we're doing in occupied area. There's a lot of work to be done. We have to have branches in all provinces. Right now, we only have branches in 2 provinces, but then we have membership in all these provinces. We just need to work harder in order for us to establish these branches. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Chairman Tafari. It's really, really great to hear about all the work going on in occupied Tanzania, and just seeing that struggle, the African working class against the African petty bourgeoisie, and really, seeing that the African working class, as you're saying, there's members in all the different provinces, and it's just powerful work going on the continent. I wanted to bring it back to Chairman Amalia Shatella, and basically, Chairman, I wanted to ask you, you know, what you see as, you know, the work going on in Africa, the work going on in Europe, around the world with Imperialism, you know, what you see, the future of it. Does the future look bright for Imperialism, you know, throughout the world? Uhuru.
Uhuru. The future looks extremely bright, and we will help to understand some things about Imperialism, what its responsibility and role and possibilities are right now by presentation, both by Comrades Secretary General Luizi and by Comrade President Tafari. And that is precisely because Imperialism is an instrument of the African working class. It is under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. So it has the ability to bring masses of African people who may be engaged in all kinds of struggle everywhere, from trying to deal with the issues in the shanty towns and the expropriation of land, as we see happening right now in South Africa, occupied Zambia. One of the big questions is land. And there are organizations that spring up to speak specifically just to the question of land and things like that. And so all over the African world, wherever we are located, masses of people need to be able to respond to what is happening to us on the ground, the thing that gives it coherence, the things that gives it a revolutionary trajectory, the thing that takes this mass movement of the people, mass efforts of the people, change the circumstances from just sheer and only spontaneity without any kind of strategic projection is its relationship to the African People's Socialist Party. And so that even though we have a situation where people who are not revolutionary can come into NPDUM, NPDUM itself is a revolutionary organization because it is a vehicle, a strategic vehicle for the African revolutionary under the leadership of the African working class. It's advanced attachment, the African People's Socialist Party. And the fact is that these contradictions that we are facing as African people everywhere are deepening every day, in part and because of the growing crisis of the social system itself that the social system that rests upon our oppression and exploitation. And part of this unease of the social system is the struggle of African people. So that's going to always be there. And the struggle, of course, is that to make it coherent, to give it a coherent strategic trajectory in its relationship to the African People's Socialist Party, growing everywhere, all around the world, is what guarantees that NPDUM will grow, NPDUM will be successful, and the African working class will succeed because it has the advantage of leadership from the advanced attachment. So I'm very positive about the growth and development, and precisely because we see real emergence of real forces who are being tested in actual struggle all over the world. And South Africa, what you just spoke to, is one of the glowing examples of that occurring in the development of cadre among the masses of our people. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Chairman. I did want to see if we had a little bit of time, if anybody had any questions for any of our panelists. I know we won't have too much time, but if we did have some questions on Facebook, Zoom, YouTube, for any of our panelists.
Let me say this, Comrade, leading to that. Don't be confused about the question of democracy. Democracy is simply a form of the state. We talked about the Greeks and how they were always held up as the prime example of democracy that defines its trajectory in what is characterized as Western Europe. But under the ancient Greeks, it was a democracy where only 20% of the people were free. 80% of the people were enslaved under Greek democracy. I'm talking about white people who were enslaved. And so what you had is a democracy that did not benefit masses of people, just a small group. In this country, the United States, democracy, they talked about it up until, that was even during an era where African people were held in slavery. in South Africa, which was considered by the Europeans a democratic place because white people could vote. They had constitutions and things like that. But it was a democracy at the expense of masses of people. So the struggle, and it was called, the form of the state was characterized as apartheid. So people were confused, many of them. They said, let's struggle to get rid of apartheid. So you get rid of apartheid, which is a form of the state. It is not getting rid of the social system that oppresses and exploits African people. So don't be confused. When we talk about democracy, part of what we understand is that for the colonized, the highest expression of democracy is self-determination, and you are approaching that and achieving greater levels of what we might characterize as democracy to the extent that we limit or remove the highest expression of, to the extent that we remove the involvement of the colonial state in the lives of African people. That's the struggle for democracy. And even then, of course, you know, a lot is left to be desired, but as an anti-colonial democracy negates the ability of the colonial state to intervene in the lives of African people. That's democracy. That's the form, that's the fight for democracy. Uhuru.
Uhuru, I really appreciate that, Chairman, because I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding exactly what you said and why we're called the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. So I really appreciate that clarity on that. So I did not see any questions come through. Yeah, I didn't see any questions come through or anything. So I did want to, if there's anything any of our panelists wanted to say, Secretary General Luwezi, Chairman Tafari, I wanted to go ahead and, you know, just allow you to just wrap it up, just finish. I really appreciate your participation.
Yes, well, yeah, just in terms of why NPDAM is internalization of NPDAM is important, why we need to build NPDAM as mass organization party everywhere. So we're dealing with a single world economy where there is no possibility of having a victory within the colonial borders imposed on us by our oppressors. So the unification and the unity of our struggle, it has to be really deepened, understood. So we are definitely, we need, that's one reason I showed those slides. You know, we need to generalize and popularize the NPDAM RNDP programs that will allow us to better integrate all aspects of our struggle so we can consolidate a united leadership, you know, around across the African nation, so we can really not only expose but push the African bourgeoisie to its limit, because the African bourgeoisie doesn't have to fight all the workers. They only have to contain the workers where they are. And then they use all mechanism, you know, trouble, politics, they use all kind of things to divide the people. What NPDAM is going to do is build unity from below that cuts across borders from the Caribbean to the North America to Europe, African South. And we can really effectively, you know, push the neocolonial state in respective territory where we engage for power to its limit, because we can overpower them, you know, if the unity of the workers is done effectively. And we have definitely to systematize, as I said before, the call for international Black power. Only African internationalism, only NPDAM and the leadership of the party can do that, can bring the struggle for Black power everywhere. It's not just a slogan I heard from the 60s, but it's actually the medicine we need for all the problems we are confronted with. We will have to go into bilingual kind of meetings where we do a meeting, you know, we translate, you know, African language, Spanish, so we can just cut across the borders quickly, because the borders we have to remove in the process of struggling. We don't wait one day. You know, when victory happens, like what there's a process. So in that process, some of the things need to be done that will undermine definitely the power, the neocolonial powers, and things like that. So these are some of the things basically I feel like the NPDM can do, and they'll, so we can move forward. Yes, welcome. Right. I really appreciate being on the panel. Thank you so much.
Uhuru Comrade.
Uhuru, Chairman Safari.
Yes, Comrade. I just want to quickly say just two things. Like 2 weeks ago, there's a senior old boy who's killed by the police in one of the townships here. And also political, especially the EFF, which is supposed to be the most radical and stuff. Like we're talking about that cop being corrupt or something like that, and they say make sure that he gets arrested and so forth. But then when we went there, like last week, we as the part as INPIDAM to that township, and when we talked to the people suggesting that we have to build INPIDAM here, and that's what we'll be doing. We committed ourselves to go there every Sunday until a branch built in that community. And when we talked to the people, they told us that there are a lot of young people who have been killed by the police there. It's just that made the news. That particular case made the news, and lots of political organizations are not even concerned about that. They had to respond because it was on the news and they had to have some opinion about it. So this is what's going to distinguish us is really build permanent organization right there in those townships, and the fact in which we organize ourselves will be different because most organizations do have branches, but then the branch organized around waiting for election times, and when they'll go house to house, issue a pamphlet around vote for us and forth. But then we have to solve all the contradictions inside those communities. I just want to say that, and so I didn't get a chance to mention that we are like just recently at this year, I was appointed by the chairman as director of organization for the Africa region of the ASI, and building in Ghana, Sierra Leone, Uganda, and then we have membership across the continent, and be like just like there will be more that will be of input across the continent, and studies are being engaged on the RNDP and other documents that have been produced by the party in the movement. So we are winning across the continent.
Uhuru, and then I just wanted to give you, we have just a couple more. I know we're a little bit over time, but if you wanted a couple more minutes to finish off, Chairman Amalia Shatella, and then we could go ahead and end this panel.
Uhuru, the final comment I would have is the fact that, first of all, just saluting Comrade President Tafari, who is the Director of Organization for the Continent of Africa, for the African Socialist International, for the African People's Socialist Party worldwide. What's really significant is who we are. He mentioned the EFF and the kinds of things that they do. And we know of other organizations who have protests and regularly, but what we are doing is bringing the African working class directly into the struggle for power. The African working class is being trained in our organizations to be organized and to be able to fight for themselves and their own interests. And we're doing that in the townships where we mentioned that there are people who may go door to door in the township and pass out a flyer saying, vote for me. But we do the work that bring the people into political life in their own organization and what have you. And that's what's so powerful about NPDM. And it doesn't happen just in occupied Tanzania or South Africa, but everywhere we are located. That's the kind of work we do. And that's fundamental because the objective has to be to take power. It's not just not only to sort of pressure the ruling class to treat us better, but to be able to take power. And every struggle that we get involved in that might be characterized as reform is not the same as reformism. We have the ability to fight for reform that elevates our capacity to take power, but we don't see a reform as the final solution. And the final analysis when we talk about the struggle for communism, which is ultimately what we're talking about, which means that we're fighting to reacquire a classless society, a society without classes, which means we are fighting for a society without the state. And ultimately, because the democracy is a form of the state, ultimately, we are struggling against democracy for the acquisition of genuine freedom for our people. A new world, Uhuru.
Uhuru. I definitely want to thank all of our panelists. This was an amazing panel. Let's keep building Impedum internationally, and I want to pass it on to our host, Dexter. Uhuru.
Uhuru Mwambi. I really want to appreciate that panel. And this is what we mean when we say we are the international People's Democratic Uhuru movement. This is why we're having this convention today. This is why the theme of our convention is 100 years later, it's still red, black, and green, because we are building fronts of the African Revolution everywhere. You just heard from the US front of the African Revolution, the UK front, and the occupied Azania front. Listen, we are building everywhere, including where you are. You who's watching right now. You want to get involved, you know what's right to get involved, you know how to get involved. Well, let me tell you what you can do. Go on npdum.org today and click join, inpdum.org, and let's make this work happen. But moving this along, I next want to bring on next presenter, Tashara Masimba, a St. Louis native and a veteran Black Power activist. Tashara was the Economic Development Director for the Black Power Blueprint. And the thing about Tashara is he has led these economic development programs in defense of the African working class, not at the expense of the African working class. He currently oversees the development of the Uhuru House and the Quabba Hall, a community garden and amphitheater, as well as public recreation spaces in the African community of North St. Louis, in places where abandoned buildings had been left by white power to rot. Today, Tashara is going to be speaking a little bit on the NTU brigades, the key towards membership development and branch building. Uhuru, Tashara.
All right, Uhuru Comrades. I appreciate the opportunity to present here. And I just want to recognize the profound leadership of, first off, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, formed APSP in 1972 and was part of the struggle prior to that and has not stopped building the African Revolution all over the planet. Also to Deputy Chair Onasene Yeshitela, who leads all of the economic work in the African People's Socialist Party, whom I report to. And then Comrade Kalambayi Mofi Andanet, the international leader of the International People's Democratic Uhuru, for this profound convention and profound leadership, organizing Africans everywhere. And also to the International Executive Committee of the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement. Do we have the slide coming up? Okay, so I'm just waiting for the slide. And I have it. If we need to share my screen, I can show it as well.
Do we need for Comrade Tashara to show it?
Okay, here we go. Thank you. All right, so this is, as was stated, this is a presentation of the NTU Volunteer Brigade. This is the volunteer arm of the entire movement of the Uhuru movement. All right, next slide. And I want to recognize the Vice Chair Abdullah Alexander and Secretary, Project Director Stephanie Mittler. All right, next. Okay, so I want to pick up some of the recent developments because most of us will have seen this. Many of us will have seen this presentation, but recently, there have been some real significant changes. So we saw this white nationalist police. 4 of them murdered George Floyd in Minneapolis. Next slide. And this had this affected how volunteers came into our movement. So we saw an uptick of volunteers throughout all of our organizations. And it appeared a bit chaotic at first because we really were not prepared to really handle the level of volunteers effectively. Next slide. So this was a previous, we had developed this app, try to put a real good process in place for people to be able to follow and set up into you wherever you are. But this process just wouldn't work with the new volunteers, this influx of volunteers that we had. Next slide. So, previously, we learned some things. So previously, we had some struggle with bringing volunteers effectively into organization already, at least in some of the organizations. So like for the example, the institutions, I think were pretty effective in bringing in volunteers and keeping those volunteers pretty, effectively. They have regular store hours. They have regular operations that are clearly defined and accountable. So I think that worked pretty well. Also, we brought people in to join the movement, join campaigns, and so that was kind of one method of bringing people in. But we had things like social media that we always wanted to bring people in to be able to help with things like social media, but it was very difficult because we just struggled with how to allow people to help when we couldn't share passwords. And people they don't know, they're not African internationalists, so they can't post content that reflects African internationalism. So we had some of those contradictions, and we needed a process. And when we began to get all of these volunteers into you began to develop a process to really bring them in, and became more and more effective. But one of the things, issues we were having was that especially because it was virtual, as a result of COVID, much of it was virtual. And we were losing volunteers as we attempted to transition them from orientation into the work. So then I began to work with some of the different teams, the Africans 1 Billion Strong team, Black Power Blueprint team, to really try to help them put a process in place to really be able to accept an influx of volunteers, bring them in seamlessly, and in a way that will keep them, motivate them, and not lose volunteers. The other thing is that we learn the difference between a project plan and a process. So we do like plans of action. We have goals, objectives, timelines, budgets, deliverables. But a process was a little bit different. We recognized, and a process was like a cycle that can be repeated and constantly improved. So a project plan is, more dealing with change, right? Planning for change, but a process is more about continuity and maintaining whatever your plan is, maintaining those gains, and when possible, creating a process that helps that those gains, be maintained institutionally. Next. So we began to discover a process at work. We began to notice certain stages, and that we would lose volunteers during stages or transitions from one stage to the next. So we learned things like you have to contact the volunteers right away after they inquire, or after you make contact with them. You have to give them a fast and easy way to sign up for an orientation. You have to give them constant reminders, and you have to have a process to seamlessly move them from orientation into the actual work. We also learned that they need to know their job, when they need to have tools when possible. And then not only is it good for them to know what is expected of them, it's good when they can know how they fit into an overall process. But we also learned, or it was re-emphasized, that they need to be a part of the bigger picture. And that's African internationalism, and we'll get into that a little more. Next. So we began to see some order amid the chaos. Next. So it's like, as an analogy, it's like a farmer learning the science of agricultural production. So, you got stage one where you prepare the land, you remove the obstacles, you enrich the soil, you manage the water supply, you control the weeds, you plant, you control pests and diseases, you compare the results, and then you harvest. Next. So a process emerged. So for example, within NTU, we began to see, okay, so once we've done some other stuff, but the core process at this point that we're trying to solve is, okay, so people inquire about volunteering. So that's one stage. Number two, then they schedule an orientation. Number three, they complete an orientation. Number four, they're then introduced to their sponsor, which is what we're calling the people who will provide leadership for the volunteers. There are other steps, but this is kind of some of the things that began to reveal itself. Next. All right, next. So just to say a little bit about how it's working. So how do volunteers discover us? Well, of course, they discover us through outreach, whether it's on the ground or, the web shows, the chairman studies, however people contact, find out about us through one variation of outreach or another. But then we also post volunteer listings on LinkedIn, which has been very effective, Volunteer Match, and the blackpowerblueprint.org website as well. So anybody utilizing NTU, you should be utilizing at minimum these four sources. All right, next. So all contacts entered into a form, should be entered into a form. So whether you meet a volunteer doing outreach, we've developed a process where we can put a form onto a mobile device, or whether they go to one of those websites, platforms, and contact us. All contacts should be entered into a form, an online form, and okay. So just let's move forward. Next, and then that allows you, one, to be notified, to get an email notification that you have a new contact. So of course, if somebody just goes to the blackpowerblueprint.org website, we may have never met this person, or they may have just been Googling Black Power and came across us. But they inquire through an online form, we get an email notification. All right, next. And then we get the email notification. What we've been doing, we would invite them to choose an orientation date. And, we had this issue where we got to go back and forth with phone calls and emails and, trying to set up a date. So what we initially did was we would send them this link to Meeting Bird, which puts a calendar, gives them a link. It pops open a little small calendar that I've already put, set orientation days and times in. So Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays, we have orientations, and they can just go in, choose it. It's relatively simple, for people that, if a person does any kind of online work or uses email, it'll work for them. And eventually what we did also now is we've put it into the Black Power Blueprint website. So when people go to blackpowerblueprint.org, and they can see about the project, they can see how they can donate, and then they can see how they can volunteer. And then they just click, if they want to volunteer, they click on a date on this calendar, the dates that are in white or the available days. It pops open the times. They click on the time that they want to choose, and then they answer some questions, their name, their email, how would they like to volunteer. They get a drop down where they can say, I want to do graphic design, gardening, etc. So they can fill it out, and then we get notified. So next. All right, so then they set up the orientation. They get constant reminders. We make sure they remember. So then they come into the orientation. If we can do it virtually, we do it virtually. But we don't expect that all of the volunteer orientations will be virtual orientations, especially as we come through COVID. But right now, most of them are. Next. So then after they complete orientation, so if I host the orientation and I have 3 people in orientation, for example, I will send out an email and I will say, Uhuru Comrade Mwambi, I want to introduce you to Stacy. Stacy lives in so-and-so. She's a graphic designer. She would like to volunteer to be able to produce memes or whatever. And I think she would be a good fit for the social media team that you lead. And then, I would say Mwambi, so Stacy, meet Mwambi. Mwambi will set up a day and time to meet with you, to onboard you, bring you into the process, et cetera, and that happens. And so Mwambi will respond. He would say, Uhuru, greetings, Stacy. We look forward to bringing you onto the team. Can you meet this day at this time or whatever? So next. All right, so the sponsor then, Mwambi in this case, would set the meeting and onboard the volunteer. So, he may go over some sections of the POA, to really help Stacy understand, what the social media team is doing, et cetera. And then he'll also help Stacy understand where she fits into the process. So see if she's the graphic designer. The social media team also has a pipeline similar to the volunteer orientation pipeline. And Mwambi will say, okay, you're the graphic designer. You get this part of the team will source the material. They give the material to you. Then you create the graphic design. These are the guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. This is when we want to, this is when it's due, et cetera. How many graphics can you produce a week? Okay, you can produce 2. Okay, so I'll set it up where you'll be able to produce 2 graphics a week. And if your schedule changes and you can do 5, then we can make that happen as well. Next slide. All right, next slide. All right, so all contacts are entered into a form. As we said, that form goes to a spreadsheet. Next slide. That spreadsheet then becomes the basis for us to, it feeds into what becomes the pipeline, the volunteer pipeline. So, the form will have, the fields that, answer the questions that tell us where this person will be in the pipeline. Next. And then the pipeline helps us keep up with, this influx of volunteers that we have. So we can see how many people we've had inquire about volunteering, but who have not necessarily signed up. So we know that we want to continue to call and email them, up to a certain amount of times. And then we can see how many people we have scheduled for orientation, what dates and times they're scheduled for orientation, how many people have completed orientation but have not yet been introduced to a sponsor. So we need to hurry up and make that happen so that we don't lose that volunteer, et cetera. Next. We've been using Asana and we've been trying out Smartsheet as well. In Smartsheet, you can see the pipeline with different views. So you can also not only see it by stage, but you can also see it by the person that has been assigned. So Mwambi would be, in this case, as a sponsor, he would be one of the people to whom volunteers are assigned. So we can see who has what volunteers assigned to them if we want to view it in that fashion. Next. The pipeline also helps, we can view it by team assigned. So if we know Mwambi leads social media, we can see how many, quick view to see how many volunteers the social media team has. We can see that the African workforce only has 1 volunteer right now. That's something that, we will be really taking on now that, the work has begun on the 4plex. So we need to bring more people into that. Next. Next. So this is the result. I mean, the social media team, as I said, social media was one of those things we had a real problem bringing people into for security reasons and, you know, political reasons. But this is the social media team led by Casey Mackey under the leadership of the Black Power Blueprint. We have Monsi Modi, Kwa Hammond, Zalile, Kriti, Helen Yu, Marquise, you know, so we have a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people on social media now. Next. AOBS has a growing team as well. And we have people from all over the world, you know, India, different parts of Africa, throughout Europe. These people are situated, some are everywhere. All right, next. And producing real fantastic content. So this is an example of the social media workflow. So again, in order to feed volunteers into, I got 10 minutes left. All right, in order to feed volunteers into the social media team without losing them, we had to really work with the social media team. And then Zay played a big role in this. And Casey was like the first, you know, guinea pig, and she took it on. She really applied it and made it happen, and has been just flourishing along with AOBS as well, and some of the other processes too. So, you know, they source the content. That's a team. You got a team that chooses what kind of platform it goes on. They edit the content politically and, you know, otherwise. You got a team that produces the content. So that would be the graphic designer. That's where Stacy would go. You got a team that posts the content, a team that responds to the content, a team that analyzes the content. And then the next thing is we really got to have a team that will really deal with making sure that we are really going out and converting, you know, people who respond to our content. Next. So Uhuru Foods and Pies also utilized Smartsheet and looked at Asana as well, but to really put a process in place for the business sales pipeline. And then from what I understand, it really helped that process come to life. And, you know, so now Siali, Bakari, Sobek are all, you know, have a role in that business sales pipeline, and they've really taken it on from what I understand, and we're really excited about it, and it's working really well. Next. So again, you know, they can view it. So we saw a view where, you know, we could view it by the person who is leading a particular stage in the pipeline, but now you can see it by the stage. So, you know, when someone from UFP, Uhuru Foods and Pies, and they make the initial call to a business to try to get them to buy pies. So you can see how many people are in the pipeline for the initial call to be made. And then you see how many people want samples. You can see how many samples are delivered and how many active buyers we have. And you can see, you know, and I don't know what's happening, you know, I don't know this process, but you might be able to determine, okay, so we have a bottleneck here where people want samples. We got all these people who want samples waiting, you know, what's the holdup? So why is there a bottleneck in the process? Uhuru, next. So media relations also developed a real pipeline, and it's really, I think, just 2 people doing it, but it's so clear that it's even effective with just 2 people. But if we want to continue to bring people into the process for a better division of labor, we could do so. Next. And the projects have suffered. I thought I had another slide for that. Let's move forward. I think I got another slide for that. All right, let's move forward. All right, so, you know, one of the ways that we kind of are understanding this, right? So you got, if you look at this, you got to the left where it says point, right? That represents like a change to a small isolated process. So we had to really develop the into you process. But then we move to the second column where you see the dots that are not connected and not in a straight line. We began to make changes to small, somewhat related processes. So we had to create a process for social media so that we can feed volunteers into social media. So it's related, but it's not like a direct flow. But then next, where it says line, that represents change to a connected set of processes. So that's when you really line up all of the different processes that feed one into the other to make sure you get a certain outcome. And then where it says plane, that's when you really connect all, a set of critical processes. And I'll show some examples, where you really identify, okay, so what output are we really trying to get? What are what's the critical activity? What are we doing? So you line up those critical things. And then where it says cube, it represents where you try to interconnect the entire system to work in a seamless fashion. Next. So for example, where it says point, we had into you. The next column that says set. So we began to develop the process for Black Power Blueprint social media, Uhuru Foods and Pies, AOBS social media, and Black Power Blueprint projects. And then where it says line, okay, so now we can say, okay, so first in this process, we know that we got to get a hold to people. So it's just an example. We could put outreach first, but as an example, we could say social media. So we know we go online, we post stuff, and then we want to convert people into volunteers. So boom, you drive them into the interview process. Then the interview process, you drive them into one of the organizations or campaigns such as the Black Power Blueprint projects. And then of course, the end goal, and when possible, is to produce APS recruits, revolutionaries, cadre. And so then you move to plane. Plane is when you say, okay, so what are the critical things we want to produce as an organization? We want to produce cadre, revolutionaries. So we want to line up all of our processes to make sure we produce revolutionaries. We need donations, reparations, et cetera. We want to line up our process to drive home, this outcome of producing donors. And we want mass participation, such as impedum. So we want to drive all of our processes into that. And then where it says cube, you see all of the other areas of work, that could develop processes that really, keep everything from being isolated. Next. So, we see it as a form of socialized production, where we've been able to achieve in terms of processes. So just like you have a stage in the production and agricultural production, and you have different people participate in agricultural production as a form of socializing the productive forces. You do that as well when you develop a way to bring people in and create a division of labor. So next. So, we don't have we can't open it up to people, but, what do you notice here? This is the volunteer inquiry process. And one of the things is what we said earlier. Let's move forward to the next slide. Much time I got. Okay, so it's a bottleneck right here. That could represent a bottleneck. So we got people waiting on a reply from their sponsor. So we know that there's an issue with that. We need to tighten up how it is we get a better outcome, to make sure sponsors are following up when we send out emails to introduce them to the new volunteers. We can't have the volunteers waiting. Next. Then the other thing, so I don't know I hope people can see this. I don't know how well we can see it, but so after you, in column where it says column 7, ongoing volunteer L1. So that's when the person has actually become a volunteer. L1 means level 1. So, we got to really define this, but these are volunteers who really just have a real basic level of unity with the work and with African internationalism's theory and practice. The goal is to move them up to ongoing volunteer level 2, ongoing volunteer level 3, again, so we could, when possible, produce the outcome of turning people into revolutionary cadre. So we can look at this and we can see that we got these volunteers, all these volunteers, but they're all at level 1. And so what we need to develop our forces. Next. So they need to be part of the bigger picture. That's another critical thing, is that it can't just be about maintaining some processes and, which could be real status quo. but our goal is to develop our forces so we create African internationalists. Next. So, we use certain tools. It could become tool driven, okay, we got Smartsheet, we got Asana, and you get lost in that, and even with the thing of trying to develop processes and systems that can take the work to a higher level. Next. But ultimately, we gotta create African internationalism, and that's what the interview process has to be about, and the work that we do has to be about. And it may be the last slide. Next. Uhuru. Thank you, comrades.
Uhuru Comrade T'Challa. And if you did have time, there was actually one question that was posed by Matsamela Odom. It is, if we place the NTU brigade process for Impedum, would our volunteers be officially part of NTU brigades?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's something that we got to do better at, is that, all volunteers are part of the NTU volunteer brigade. And we got to do a better job at really branding that, having t-shirts and, whatever swag material, propaganda for them to really see themselves as NTU volunteers who are going everywhere in the world to spread African internationalism.
Uhuru. Okay, I appreciate this presentation, T'Challa.
Uhuru, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we got Black Power meets Black Fashion, organized for African revolution and look good while you do it. We're talking about Uzi custom apparel. Now let's talk about the word Uzi. It's a Swahili term meaning thread. So Uzi means thread, and as you know, Uhuru means freedom. So in the Uhuru movement, we say that Uzi is a thread of freedom. You like that? So in 2020, Uzi became an LLC. And ever since then, in the words of great poets, 4 Feet Out Cobalt, they have been doing the damn thing. So at this point, I want to go into this next Uzi presentation. 4 Feet Out Cobalt, Uhuru.
Uhuru Comrades. Uhuru, I am so excited. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm excited to be here today. What I do have is my whole economic development subcommittee helping to introduce this wonderful slideshow that we have for you and program. I'm going to tell you, it's liberating. It is so liberating to, there are great gifts we can give your children than freedom and total liberation. There's no better gift. This is the journey, Uzi journey to LLC. I am 4 Feet Out Cobalt International Coordinator of Impedum Economic Development and Uzi. I want to appreciate our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onazine Yeshitela, Secretary General Luwezi Kinshasa, and International Impedum International President Columbayan Danette. I would also like to introduce the Office of Economic Development Subcommittee. We have Comrade Valerie Young, who's the secretary, Comrade Riverside, Comrade Marquise Long. I'm sorry, Comrade, I cannot pronounce your last name, but I'm gonna let you do justice to it. Comrade Zenobia Spencer, and not to be seen. Well, I'll take that back. She will be seen. Comrade Tasha K. Smalling. Uhuru. Comrade Valerie. Comrade Valerie.
Uhuru. Am I being heard?
Uhuru, comrade.
Uhuru Comrades. Once again, my name is Valerie V. Queen Young. I joined the committee as a secretary. I am the secretary of the Imperialism Office Economic Development Subcommittee. The reason why I joined this committee, I joined for knowledge. As we all know, there is a difference between information and knowledge. Information is something you choose to retain. However, knowledge is something you apply to everyday living. To be around like-minded people for a cause is powerful. To educate and serve the community allows us to reach one, teach one. Working with this committee have been very informative. It's a balance where one comrade is weak, one comrade is strong, which produces strength. It's a learning experience. Regarding Uzi vending, we take gently used clothing to be refreshed, redeveloped, and restyled to price for the international community. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Last year, Uzi brought a heat press, and it was we made it from the 2019 convention. Basically, it made it much easier and much cost effective to produce T-shirts and other products. My name is Zenobia Spencer. I'm the project manager of the Economic Development and Uzi Committee. I have been on this committee for, I want to say since April, and I've been involved with the Uhuru movement for 13 years, not 13 minutes. Uhuru. Uhuru, Marquise.
Uhuru, the Buy Back Power campaign. We make special cuts and styles named after revolutionaries and unique to make Uzi unique. Also, we will have special different cuts as we move into the future named after the designers that produce them that is a part of Uzi. Uhuru. These are more of our special cuts. As you can see, we have the marvelous Marcus cut, Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uzi swag is no joke. The creations of Uzi gives the African working class something they could not buy for colonial high-priced stores, something they could attach themselves to and feel good about themselves. African pride and education share with each piece of Uzi they purchase and look good in it. Next slide, please. Here we have the future of Uzi. The future of Uzi is the world, and we will be placed in every place in Africa's are located. We will have Uzi in every closet and online everywhere. We can be reached at uzi@blackstarindustry.org. Uhuru.
So you might have a question of what are we doing now? We have been trained to use a live assistance program for live Uzi Facebook sales and also for our Uzi custom apparel line. All right, and Facebook page. Coming real soon, we will introduce our UziCustomApparel.com website eventually later this year. Uhuru. Uzi.
The BSI. This year, what we're doing, okay, we have a Uzi BSI with the LLC as a subsidiary of Black Star Industries. We have been working diligently on POA, which will make us free with taxes and license. And as we continue to build, we will release our new website at UziCustomApparel.com. Uhuru. In the past, Uzi has participated in different photo shoots and fashion shows, but this fashion show you're looking at now is the first one created from the new Uzi LLC. We put our stamp on models that made them free and in a different land as they became to work for them. They got education on how to work for themselves. Uzi in one interview, Comrade Uhuru, next slide. In this interview, you will hear how this photo shoot affected one of the models.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello, how are you?
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Yes, so can you tell everybody your name and where you're from?
My name is Crusing Adams and I'm from St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about you. Like, how did you get into modeling?
I got into modeling at a young age, around 16, and I did a swimsuit competition. And from then on, I didn't win, but from then on, I decided that modeling was my passion. I love fashion. And I love showing off my moves. So
yes.
It really spoke to me.
Yeah, so we are very excited. So right now we are on the set of the Uzi first wardrobe, what is this, photo shoot that we are doing right now. And you are one of the first models that is going to be on our photo shoot. So I know I talked a little bit about Uzi. How do you feel about this experience?
I love Uzi. I like the idea of it. I love the movement of it. I think that this would be great for young Black women and men coming together, everybody just working together to have one steady message. And that message is that not that Black Lives Matter, but Black Power matters. And that right there speaks a whole lot. It separates itself from, it differentiates between the two. And it can bring both of those together. And I just love the idea of it.
Yes, so we are very excited. Is there anything that you would like to let, our, people that's going to watch this, we're going to be showing this at the 2020 convention.
Yes.
We want you to be watching, but what would you like people to know about you? Like, what do you want to leave? What message would you like to leave everybody?
I want people to know that I am a phoenix and I will rise from the ashes at any moment and then I'll become a new me. And I will always be a very charismatic character and I'm full of love and happiness.
Yes, thank you. Uhuru.
Uhuru, power to all.
Power to all. Power to the people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Uhuru. That was an amazing interview by our President Columbai at that actual photo shoot, and it was amazing. U.S. Uzi models or designs show how revolutionary statements speak, and the model and the customers wear revolutionary quotes and styles that represent African culture. These are some of the models from that actual shoot sporting their Uzi wear. Uhuru. In honor of Imperialism's treasured comrades, I would like for us to take a moment and if you can say in your mind, repeat after me, I'm going to say this. Long live Comrade Omowale K. Fing. Uhuru, long live Comrade Omowale K. Fing. Uhuru. Omowale is a legend in the African People's Socialist Party movement, and he supported everybody in everything we did. Uhuru, long live. Next slide. Long live Comrade. I'm sorry. Long live Comrade. I'm sorry, Comrade. This is kind of touchy. Long live Comrade Musa Abantu. Uhuru, long live Comrade Musa Abantu. This young man came into the APSP and he took us with him on the journey of a lifetime of watching the development of a cadre come to life. We lost him much too early. Uhuru, long live Comrade Musa Abantu. Next slide. Long live Comrade. Due to the pandemic striking us in a way that took us on a sail that we never wanted. This is Comrade Nicola McIntyre. I want to say Nicola was in my economic development as the secretary, and we will miss her and we hold her high. We treasure her and the work that she did. She was an amazing comrade. Long live Comrade Nicola McIntyre. Uhuru, comrades, Uhuru. Long live Comrade Nicola McIntyre. Uhuru. Now, at this point, I will let you know the timeline of the development of the UZI LLC. At the African People's Socialist Party 7th Congress 2018, Chairman forwarded the fact that UZI will become a part of Black Star Industries as an LLC. At the plenary, the 2020 plenary, it was laid out how we would do that. And it has been an amazing work that we put in time, and we still are putting in time working on this LLC project under the leadership of Deputy Owner Zene Yeshitela. And then when the colonial virus hit, you thought that stopped something? No, it did not. It just made us work harder. And we are working hard to make this come true because we need dual and contending power. This is what UZI becoming an LLC mean to us. We'll be able to be all around the world, everywhere Africans are, and we're going to make that happen. At present, we're working on a website that will be done very soon, and we're going to roll it out so everyone will know. The photo shoot you just saw was one of the first events from this process, and the POA continues as we continue to do this diligently. In September, which is now, my goal is to recruit 15 volunteers, and we need you. We need your talent. We need you to give it back to the African nation because UZI is a work in progress. But I'm gonna tell you, what we do is bring the African working class, just like we are a part of Imperialism. We bring the African working class from all walks of life that's in the industry to political life. What we need now, comrades, I'm going to ask is to, if you are interested in working with UZI and moving into the future with us and bringing Africans back to political life, giving them the ownership of their skills, saying no more colonialism, we will not have it. We are looking for fashion designers, graphic engineers, bookkeepers, web designers, web managers, shipping and handling coordinators, photographers, inventory management, models, sales rep, UZI project managers, special media coordinators, marketing consultant. And if you just want to be a volunteer to help us with this project, wherever you are and whatever you do, you can contact us at UZI at blackstarindustries.org. Next slide. Now, I want to give special appreciation to Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Olazine Yeshitela, President Columba Ian Dinette, the Executive Committee of the IEC, Comrade Marissa Martinez, who is a part of that IEC, but she's worked diligently with Uzi, Imperium Economic Development Subcommittee, who I acknowledged in the beginning, Rashid Lanier, the website designer, and the first website designer we started with was Christina Johnson. Uhuru Comrades. Now I want to introduce you to I want you to take special attention to this short Uzi video. Uhuru. Uzi Custom Apparel is a customizing revolutionary style clothing line that serves as the economic development institution for the International People Democratic Uhuru Movement, NPDUM. NPDUM is the mass organization of the Uhuru Movement created by the African People's Socialist Party to win Africans to self-determination. In 2020, Uzi Custom Apparel became an LLC and a subsidiary of Black Star Industries with the mission to influence African people to be self-determined with revolutionary teaching through the clothes and articles we sell and lessons we teach with each purchase of Uzi product. We want to make Uzi Custom Apparel an international brand by putting revolution on the backs, minds, and in closets of the African nation until all Africans are free. Uzi means thread in Swahili. In the Uhuru movement, we call it a thread of freedom to promote freedom and to build economic development in African communities worldwide. Uzi was entrusted to Impedum to create dual and contending power, to enable Impedum to become a part of the people we serve and offer revolutionary style. Uzi offered the African working class artistic, crafty, and creative ways to show pride in being African and why it's important to not just buy Black, but to buy Black power. Uzi Custom Apparel offers the African community their revolutionary voice on their jackets, t-shirts, dresses, and pants. Every Uzi purchase is unique. No design is identical, which is why we are Uzi Custom Apparel. The fashion industry is the most wasteful industry in the world. Styles change every season. The competition is fierce and wasteful among the colonial industries. Uzi takes gently used clothing and refreshes, refurbish, and restyle them for affordable pricing to the African community. Uzi promotes sustainability and is good for the environment by recycling reused items and placing them back into the hands of the people. What does Uzi Custom Apparel becoming an LLC mean to us? This offers a continuous economic stream to employ revolutionaries. We can buy wholesale and take advantage of business programs. The LLC status will give us the opportunity to grow our brand and business online to reach more Africans worldwide. Uzi has plans to open an Uzi store on the ground in St. Louis by 2022. We can truly become an African international clothing line, giving us the power to have Uzi in Africa, the Caribbean islands, England, and everywhere African people are. We want to be the preferred choice over parasitic capitalist, overpriced clothing, and underpaid workers. Uzi represents the African revolution and puts revolution on the backs of all our customers. In other words, it is revolutionary custom apparel. Support Uzi custom apparel and bring Uzi to a country, town, or city near you. Uhuru, I want you to become a part of the baddest revolutionary clothing line in the Zodiac. So let's put a change and do some to the game of Uzi swag. Uhuru Comrades. Thank you. Back to Comrade Dexter. Uhuru.
Uhuru 4 feet. I really appreciate that presentation. And I really want to just reiterate 4 feet's call. If you are an artist, you know, if you're a photographer, an illustrator, graphic designer, anything at all, please get down with Uzi. I assure you there's no better, more righteous, more fulfilling application of your artistic abilities than applying them to the revolution. So please get down with Uzi today. Moving on, we have another cultural performance right now. Comrade Sept Shakur, a member from Imperialism out of New York. She has a piece today called Shine. Uhuru Sept.
Uhuru Comrades, Uhuru, I'm so excited to recite this piece for you all. As Dexter mentioned, this piece is called Shine. I hope you all like it. How can I live free with the weight of death on my chest, with homicide holding me hostage at my hips? My mother, strong, comforts me with crack stains on her lips. 10 black brains blaze through her hips. My mother was a slave, and I wonder if she knows it. Now, see, maybe she does, and that's why she never shows it. I remember my mother's tears like a sharp pain aching my ears, a pain that's been running rampant for years, fastened to the backs of blacks like a patent perfected for our entrapment, devoted to our detachment of self. They brought us here simply to work for their wealth. There's no concern for our hurt or our health. Like conniving canines, their only concern is their stealth, stealing black bodies, black blood, and black land. Dealing us trick cards and enforcing our hand, literally reshaping our women and dismantling our man. I don't know about you, but I'll do all that I can because my daughter will not have a fear on this land. My daughter will not shed a tear on this land, and my son will forever shine. Uhuru. I hope that that piece inspires you all to shine throughout all of the turmoil, the oppression, all of the colonial contradictions that we suffered through. And I hope you guys were inspired and enjoyed it. Uhuru. Back to Dexter.
Uhuru Sept, I really appreciate that. You could always spit. You always have bars. That was dope. I really appreciate that. From here, comrades, I know this whole long day of organizing, of building internationally. I know it's gotten everybody pretty tough, pretty hungry at this point. So at this point, we're going to adjourn to a break, a brief half-hour break, a lunch break. Get what you need to get a snack, use the bathroom, whatever you need to do, and we're gonna be back here in a half an hour. We still got a lot more to cover today, so make sure you're back in a half an hour. Ooh.